there's been a little bit of a decline in like the sort of like DIY art scene. I think with increase in rent, the spaces that previously supported community art shows and that kind of work have slowly been disappearing, which is really unfortunate.
That was painter Madeleine Tonzi. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from bartenders, artists, business owners, and other San Franciscans, telling stories and responding to the question, what is it about this place? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3, Part 2. In this podcast, Maddie and I talk about going on Instagram treasure hunts. She talks about taking the inspiration she got from all the street art she was seeing in San Francisco and Oakland, and helping to put on an art show back in 2012. Later in the episode, she shares her thoughts on the state of the art world in 2018. Here's Maddie.
When Instagram first started, it became really fun to kind of go on these like treasure hunts in those neighborhoods, like going into the Mission and finding like the tiniest little tag or wheat paste or piece of street art like tucked, wherever it was, and being able to like post that on Instagram. And it was, I noticed that the culture kind of started building around that, is like trying to find the next piece that was put up and post it. So like you, I was going on a lot of like adventures specifically for that. Like it became so much fun for me to go out into the Mission or in the East Bay, and whatever I was doing, I was always looking for like whatever type of message was, hiding around the next corner for me. I think Instagram's changed a little bit in that like a lot of those artists have their own Instagrams now. And so they just post stuff and there's no like fun in going and finding it in a way. But it's still a great way to like get out and have a reason to take a walk and look for those things.
What I've seen is artists on, and I'm talking specifically about street artists, who I follow, who will post something, but they won't tell us where it is. Mm-hmm. So there is still a little bit of
a little mystery,
fun, and maybe I will be on a random walk and I'll be like, I've seen that.
I think that's important, is to like keep a little mystery and keep people excited about finding things themselves. Yeah, I actually was just thinking about that time, like 2012, and I've talked to a couple of friends about this, and we're actually discussing maybe putting together a show of photography that was around that time. But I was just thinking about this show that we put together in 2012 called Special Delivery. So I started working with Endless Canvas, which is like a Bay Area street art and graffiti documentation website. And, part of that was because I became super interested in documenting all these artists that I was seeing on my ride to work. And in 2012, they were granted this incredible opportunity to throw an art show in this 3-story abandoned building in Berkeley. And the person who owned the building had purchased it and noticed that there was artwork in it. It had been abandoned for 12 years, something like that. It used to be an ink factory. And he wanted to, he eventually had plans to renovate and rework the building, and he wanted to preserve the artwork that was in there in some way, whether it was throwing an art show to honor the work, or photographing it and documenting it in a book. So Endless Canvas asked, would it be okay if we filled the rest of the walls with murals and we threw a big art show, and we'll document it, and that'll be it. And he said yes, miraculously, which was insane. And so at the height of that time, when all of these artists are putting up work and really like thriving on the streets, we were able to put together a showcase of all of that work, including people from, obviously Bay Area graffiti scene goes really far back. So there were artists in that show that were from all parts of the scene. And I don't know, I guess that kind of like was the equivalent of an underground music party, but on an art level for me. And it was like, it kind of symbolized that shift of like, okay, cool. So this is actually the focus now. We can throw big parties that are in these spaces that, nobody else would normally assume. And like the scene is still alive. So that was a really cool event. And I look back at that as like one of the probably like the most incredible art experiences.
That sounds great. What year was that, do you think?
That was 2012.
12, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was 3 stories of an abandoned ink factory, and every single inch of the wall was covered with a mural. And we invited over 100 artists to participate. Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Do you want to talk at all about what's happening to the arts, especially independent artists? And
yeah,
because something's going on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's a really interesting time because, there's both growth and there's good things happening for artists. I think that we're in a time where it's actually easier for artists to make a living than maybe before. Like, I think the internet has a lot to do with that. We have this whole new platform where we can reach a wider audience and spread our work. But I also have seen, and I don't think this is necessarily like, this might be a little bit of a generalization, but there's been a little bit of a decline in like the sort of like DIY art scene. I think with increase in rent, the spaces that previously supported community art shows and that kind of work have slowly been disappearing, which is really unfortunate. And
also increases in residential rent.
Yeah, exactly.
People are being forced out, choosing to get
leave.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I've lived in Oakland for 10 years and recently moved a little outside of Oakland, and it's certainly like changed my my social life, which was so much built around going to art shows and being involved. And now with a little distance between myself and Oakland, it's absolutely like changed the way that I interact with the art scene. And I know that a lot of artists are feeling that as well, like kind of being removed from their communities and trying to deal with that. And then there's those who are still living and just like struggling to kind of keep their selves where they are. And after the ghost ship fire, that really changed a lot, which was so hard on the community. Like the spaces that people create in, all these different spaces being shut down after that, it's really hard. So we're in a weird time. Like I think it's like both thriving and struggling at the same time.
Do you think we as a society value art as we should?
I'd say yes and no. I think that I don't know how to answer that question, because obviously like people appreciate the arts, but yeah, it's still difficult to be an artist. So I don't know, like there's something lacking if an artist is struggling. I have been thinking about, we need to find a way, and I know that there are organizations doing this, but we need to find a way where, especially in the Bay Area, like the tech industry is dominant, and how can they contribute to the art community? And I don't know like the exact answer, but I think there has to be something.
Well, recently, I don't know how well you follow the news, but our richest person put up for Prop C, Mark Benioff, like, so he's at least interested in what's happening on the ground in San Francisco, which I'm not going to say 100% trust the guy, but and maybe he has some ulterior motives, but something's going on, like there. Maybe he is just a decent person. I know he's from here, but I'm hoping maybe. I'm not going to pretend they're going to solve homelessness, but you know, I'm hoping that there's a sign with that he will invest in other what I consider vibrant, you know, parts of the that add to what it is to live in a place.
Yeah.
And it's art, and it's teachers, and it's nurses, and it's, you know, farmers markets, or what it's, you know, it's all those things.
Yeah, I feel like if we don't address that, then there's just going to be a point where there's no choice. We have to address that, and hopefully those types of people will acknowledge that. I think that that's actually been what was really exciting for me. The beginning of the year, I worked with Meow Wolf, which is a perfect example of like the mergence of art and tech, and they've created a experience for people that is, you know, people are willing to go and pay money and experience this over and over again, and in turn they've been really successful. And as artists who grew up in the DIY scene, they know the importance of investing back into their community and into artists. And so I think if we can come up with more models like that, it would be really wonderful, because, you know, not only are they paying artists a living wage to work for them, but they're also donating money to other DIY spaces, other art spaces that, you know, whether they need to like get up to code to exist, or just need funding to accelerate their programs, and they're doing that. And so I think that like these larger tech companies hopefully could look at that as an example. One could hope. Fingers crossed. So
check back next week when we'll feature author, musician, and teacher K.R. Morrison. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald, aka Joe Bagale. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Just a reminder to follow Storied San Francisco on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the episodes from Season 1 and from this season are up over on our website. And we've got a store with Storied SF merch that makes really awesome gifts. The address is storiedsf.com. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please help us find new listeners by rating and reviewing the show. If you have comments or suggestions, send them to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.